see in a few minutes, has a significant impact on where people park because they want to get to the front door in the shortest route. Right now, the entrance is right here on Cameron Street. This is our current location here. This is a county administration complex. If you wanted to put a building on it, you could put it on into 4 levels, preferably. Really be very difficult to get it into 3 levels. Would require acquisition of 1 more property, but we do own the rest of it. And it would face on Main Street. It would be kind of a large, imposing structure on Main Street, but this is property that we currently own. The other option, as I mentioned, is expanding where we are, and we looked at 2 options. If we took out and removed the jail, this is the historic portion of the jail, and this is the addition that was put on in 1985. This is one layout with the jail remaining. You can see it pretty well encroaches on West Street. And we do have to have a circulation pattern here to get people in and out of the Cameron Street entrance to service the jail and the couple of businesses right here. If we remove the jail, it does allow for a much more efficient footprint of the court facility. It does free up a lot of space on the West Street side where you could put a plaza or some parallel parking to replace some of the parking that we would lose here on Cameron Street. And you would still be able to have the private parking for the businesses off of Cameron. So the jail is a big influencing factor on whether you construct in the current location or not. If you do remove that, you do have a lot more flexibility than if you don't. We haven't looked at alternate sites that are not included right here in town. The major things that you want to consider is the size of the building remains basically the same. The need is 100,000 square feet. It's the site development costs, and there's a lot of trade-offs just depending on where that site is. There are some sites that would require a lot more off-site improvements. There are sites that would not. If you could find a location where you already had parking, such as a shopping center, where you didn't have to recreate something like that, and you could share it with businesses, that's a positive. If you go to a greenfield site where you build out where there's nothing right now, then you'd have parking that was used just for courts without a synergy or an additional use after hours. But the site development cost is the major comparison between whether you build downtown or out of town or elsewhere in town. There's obviously a lot of site development costs associated with constructing right here in the middle of town that are not going to be cheap, but you need to offset that when you're comparing other sites is what does it cost to get those as well. But I guess my main point is, though, that the facility itself is going to be about the same size. So that's really what you're looking at is the difference in site costs. We did a little more investigations and studies into the parking. This is a summary of parking that's currently available at the courthouse. Here's the courthouse facility. Here's the jail. This is the county's own parking lot right across the street. This is the town-owned parking lot on Cameron. This is the county parking lot at West Street, and this is the Blue Ridge Avenue space parking lot. We've done some utilization studies on those to find out how many of those spaces are available. And of these 3 lots, between the courthouse, the county lot here, and the West Street lot, right now we have 82 spaces available. And of those 82, 29 of those are reserved for employees. There are opportunities to look at wayfinding where we let employees park, because right now employees are parking right in front of the courthouse using 30 of those spaces. And so there's opportunities to change where those employees park and see if we can meet their needs in other ways. But that's something that's very important to keep in mind. There's a lot of town data available. The town collects information utilization rates on all their parking spaces in town twice a day. They've been doing that for years, so they have good information on the utilization of their parking spaces between morning and afternoon. And this is some data that we collected from them. And generally speaking, they're about 50% utilized throughout the day right now. To further study parking, Mosley did spent 2 days out in front of the courthouse where they actually interviewed everybody that came into the courthouse and asked them, where did you park? Where did you find a place to park? The areas that are shown here in red, here's the courthouse. I mean, the areas shown in yellow, I should say, are on a normal day. And that's where most of the people parked, either in front of the courthouse or in the West Street lot. And then the red is a peak day. That's a Wednesday where you have usually that Wednesday they had over 300 people coming into the courthouse, showing where people parked. As you can see, most of the parking is concentrated right around the courthouse. There were a few people that used Blue Ridge. There was very little utilization of the Spencer Street lot and the West Culpeper and Locust Street lot. Based on the town's utilization right now, there is 60 spaces available in this area, morning and afternoon, that are not being utilized by anybody. And there's 54 spaces in the morning and 67 spaces available in the afternoon in these lots. So there are opportunities here for whether we have them for employee parking or for use them for wayfinding to get people to use those lots. But there is parking available downtown right now that could delay the need for a parking garage. I think eventually one would be needed. And the town, the consensus right now is they would prefer a parking structure over on Blue Ridge Avenue on the county's property in lieu of downtown, with an at-grade entrance constructed from the parking deck to West Street to serve whatever the courthouse functions are if they're put downtown. Any questions before I go over a couple of security updates for the committee?
Questions from the committee or comments?
I think, Paul, Mr. Howard, some of the concerns I think that we've all had is, how long we'll outgrow this space eventually as well. Mm-hmm. So do we invest this much money into outgrowing? So spend it now and then spend it again. Mm-hmm. We know that the parking studies that they did weren't realistic to the needs of the people. The other thing that we were concerned about that also came from the town's letter was a reminder of the historic district overlay. And Mr. Hopewell was able to give us a little bit of information at the interactive town and county meeting the other week on that. So that will also, it has to be figured into our site plan and cost, because just like replacing that door the other couple months ago, it's what, 5-6 times more expensive than a regular door. Mm-hmm. So clearly the expense of building in town is going to be a whole lot higher for us at this site. The one thing that I have talked to a couple different people about was a site that's not within that 1,000, so we would have to go to referendum. But if Mr. Dwyer's still willing to sell his site, that might be an option in town that we could explore. I don't know if that's going to be feasible either, but that might be an option. And then outside of town, of course, is always an option that I don't think that we should close our minds to.
Ms. Fursch.
I did some research. The migration of courthouses from historic, there's roughly 50% of historic courthouses that are still in use, meaning that the rest of the counties that have historic, they've outgrown it. They chose not to try to force fit and have moved off base to allow not just through 2045, but a complex where they can continue to grow. This subject has been discussed for many years before we were on the board, and nothing's come of it. But the population continues to increase. Mm-hmm. I don't see a way out trying to force this fit where we're not doing the same thing, perhaps even in 10 years, let alone 20 years. It seems the obvious choice is the obvious choice of 50% of other counties that have hit this crossroads and have elected to build a complex away from the historical district. To me, it's just common sense, just logic. You wouldn't want to build a house knowing you're going to outgrow it in 10 years. And I don't know, that's where I am. It's inevitable, and it's going to happen whether we do this or not do it, but eventually we're going to be here again. That's the biggest issue I have.
Mr. Howard, so if we were to build on the current site, and you had mentioned that the town's preference was the parking garage would be built off of, is that Blue Ridge? Right? And then, so what would the structure be, the current courthouse parking lot? How would those two connect, or would we build a separate addition to the parking garage? Right, yes, sir, at that location, or there would just be some kind of a connector, way to connect those two?
If you built a 3-story parking deck here, the elevation of the top of the parking deck would be approximately the elevation of West Street.
Right.
You'd have to acquire some property in the back of this lot to put a pedestrian walkway from the top deck over to West Street.
Okay.
As you've mentioned, Mr. Farish and Ms. Brown, there are shopping centers in town that are underperforming. That could be opportunities if you go to a referendum that would have a lot less site development costs than a greenfield site without turning lanes and all the off-site improvements. So there's certainly other options that you could consider in town that provide a lot of infrastructure already in place versus building your own out on the greenfield, unless you want to co-locate it with something else that you're doing out in the county, whether it could be a school or government center or park or whatever.
It's a great idea to repurpose it.
But there
shopping
are a
center.
lot of areas within the town limits that could certainly address courthouse and other needs, whether it's school board or county government offices that are within town.
I'm not set on moving it out of town. I'm just set on finding ample space for the growth.
And there were also concerns, and I think Supervisor Brown, you had brought this up with regards to the town's, help me out here, the limitations of what can be built in the height of the number of floors.
Right.
Town zoning.
Right.
And I know the town wants to be actively involved. That letter that came through wanted us to inform them of every step that we did before we did it and have them fully involved in the consultation process and everything.
If
I
you,
guess except for the expense. I don't think they want us to involve them on that.
the Cameron Street site does require a lot. Closing Cameron Street would be no small feat. I mean, there would be a lot of requirements that the town would have to help with. It isn't a historic district, so parking is not a mandate, but you still have to provide it. I mean, even if it's not required, you have to provide it. And the logistics of being downtown, it is significant. We're trying to find the best option. If you don't go to a referendum, if you do go to a referendum, there's a lot more options available to you within the town and the county.
It does seem, and I will agree with my colleagues on the committee, that when we look at the site that's being proposed, we just seem to have so many different roadblocks that come up: access, parking. Can we expand? That's a great point, Supervisor Farish. So maybe it's best at this point for the committee to authorize Mr. Howard to pursue some other locations, both in town and in the county.
I would move that motion to do that.
I would second it.
Does that require a motion and a second, Mr. McCrum? Is that the best way to go about this? We just consensus from the committee? Okay. All right. Any further direction from Mr. Howard? I do agree that we need to look at different options at this point and make sure that we're doing our due diligence to look at every possible scenario, whether it involves a referendum or not a referendum.
And I think personally, I don't know what your views would be, but whether it requires a referendum for the 1,000 feet or not, I would like it to go to referendum for our citizens, just for their input, to have them be involved as well.
Okay. And I think also, Mr. Howard and Supervisor Farish, you had I believe you had agreed with this, that shopping centers, I've actually seen other communities that have taken shopping centers and have repurposed those into courthouses. And it's already is a large space with ample parking, and it works out really well. So I would like to explore that also. Mr. Ferris, you had something else?
No, that's just an excellent point.
Okay.
Really good point.
All right, Mr. Howard, so I guess that takes care of, I guess, the first part, their space needs. You had some matters regarding security also?
Yeah, I would too, just brief updates on projects we currently have going on at the courthouse for security. One of them is the exterior door replacement. We awarded a contract to Janus Construction. They prepared shop drawings for the doors. Their vendor cannot produce the doors that we had designed and included in the bid. So we are going to take their door to the Architectural Review Board for review. Their manufacturer cannot meet the stiles and rails dimensions of the doors, which would preclude us from putting the trim on there. They would all be the same, which is helpful. They're all close, which is helpful, but it doesn't actually meet the bid spec. So we're going to talk to the Architectural Review Board in June, see if they'll approve those doors so we can go ahead and proceed with those. The bulletproof doors are UL rated for bulletproofing, and the manufacturers don't want to deviate from that. If they do, then they have to go through the UL rating process for the custom door. And that would add a significant amount of expense if they're even willing to do it. The current vendor's not even willing to do it. So that's where we are. It will go to the ARB for review and approval. If they deny it, then it can go to town council for approval, and then the judge can also consider any actions he may want to take. Or we can rebid it for a third or fourth time and see if we can find anybody that's willing to put in the doors.
And that board, Mr. Howard, is through the town as well, correct?
The Architecture Review Board is the town architect, ARB, yes. The other item we update is the bollards. We've had a request from the sheriff's office to install some additional concrete barricades on Cameron Street in front of the bollards. We're getting some pricing on that right now. We'll come back to you. These would be concrete barricades that you would put in front of the parking spaces along Cameron Street. It looks like it's going to be around $10,000 to $15,000, depending on the exact dimensions and placement of those. So that's something we're doing in process right now that will come back to you. I just want to let you know that that will be coming.
And that goes in front of the ballards?
That would go in front of the bollards.
So then what was the purpose of the ballards?
The bollards were put there to provide a barricade from somebody running into the courthouse. The concrete barriers would be in addition to those bollards.
So if we had done the concrete barriers first, or if he had requested those first, we wouldn't have had to do the ballards.
I don't know if we would have had to do both or not. They requested the bollards first, so that's what we put in.
Are they leaving the existing ballards?
Yes.
Okay,
That
Okay.
concludes my report.
thank
Anything
you.
else from the committee for Mr. Howard on this topic? Mr. Howard, we look forward to you coming back to us with some options regarding the courthouse, both in town and in the county.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Actually, one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The video of the police officer opening,
That's
Supervisor
in
Ferris.
closed session.
We have that later on the agenda.
That's
Okay.
that is our topic for the closed session item.
well, let's say that you had a door that was easy to unlock. Do you have to replace the door, or can you just replace the locks?
You can modify the door operations to try to eliminate that ability.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Howard. And on to item C, in new business, the committee will discuss revisions to the lease for the office building at 122 West Cameron Street and 15 parking spaces in the lot behind 302 North Main Street. Mr. Howard, you are back with us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We purchased the property at 122 West Cameron Street a little over a year ago. And the property is part of that deal right behind this building. It has 15 parking spaces. We're all part of the same purchase. The tenant that we purchased it from is now leasing that property back from the county for $2,500 per month. And in accordance with the terms of our lease agreement, if we want to change anything regarding that lease agreement, Those changes would need to be made by August 1st of 2026. That lease may also be terminated upon 6 months' notice. Wanted to bring that to your attention now to see if you want to make any changes to their lease. The current lease is about $30,000 per year. The building has approximately 10,000 square feet of gross square footage. And at current market rate, that would be in the vicinity of $200,000 if you rented the whole facility. The 15 parking spaces that they occupy behind our building, if you were renting those from the town, you can buy a parking permit from the town for any of their public lots. That's $30 a month. That would be $5,400 per year. So the rent significantly below market for the office space and the parking lot. And the question is, do we want to continue leasing the space? Do we want to go through a public process to lease the space, or do we want to terminate the lease, use it for county uses, or do we want to adjust the current lease term? So that's for discussion purposes if where you're going to
And
proceed.
Mr. Howard, just to clarify for the committee, the purpose of purchasing this property initially was in preparation for courthouse renovations, additions, new courthouse on this downtown site, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And if the courthouse does not get built downtown, that is space the county can use for
Right.
either additional parking, or we could build government offices on there, or anything else we want to do with it. But that
All right.
space is available to the county.
So we can continue the lease if the tenant wishes to continue as well, correct?
They have not indicated they want to terminate the lease. Either party can terminate it, but they
Right.
have not indicated that. They want to continue leasing, and the question is, do we want to modify the terms?
All right. Questions or comments from the committee or a motion?
I noticed that the rents were incredibly below market rate. I'm tenant agnostic. It doesn't matter to me who's in it, but I think market rate should be applied to any county building, irrespective of the tenant.
Mhm.
So that would be my preference, is to elevate the rents to market rate, and whoever rents it, just to be fair to all parties. Looks like a sweetheart deal.
I would agree with that. We just did a couple commercial leases, and that's phenomenal. That's a great deal. My only question is, on the sale of that, was there anything that was tied to the sale and the deed that would restrict us from modifying that at any time?
No, the commercial lease is separate.
Okay.
All right, it appears that the consensus of the committee is to continue the lease and adjust the rent.
We can
Mr. Howard, do you want to come back with,
we can reach out to the tenants and to the and propose some lease rates and see if they're willing to continue leasing the space, or we can put it out for a public bid and see if anybody wants to lease it. We'll come back to the committee.
all right, the committee is good with that approach?
Yes.
Supervisor Ferris, okay. All right, Mr. McCrum, you have something to add?
No.
No, okay, all right. All right, Mr. Howard, thank you very much
Thank you.
for all of your assistance this morning, and we will now, this committee will now, I'm sorry, Sheriff Chilton.
Yeah, just want to clarify one thing with the bollard
Yes, sir.
extensions. That was from the circuit court judge. That wasn't from the sheriff's
Yes,
office.
sir. I think
That
we
was
understand
that
that,
was
yeah.
beyond that, just for the viewing public, that we were not asking for extra there, but that was from the U.S. Marshal, where they did the securities
Uh-huh.
event for it. That came from that to the circuit court judge, and then the circuit court judge down to Mr. Howard.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yep,
just want to make sure
okay.
I cleared that.
Yes, sir, thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to go into closed session, and for those that are viewing at home, we will go into closed session. Once we come out of closed session, the TV cameras will come back on, correct, Bradley? Yes. All right, and then we will continue with our meeting, and then we will move on to the rest of the committee meeting. So Supervisor Brown, if you could read us into closed session, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into closed session as permitted by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for the following purpose: to discussion of plans to protect the public safety and briefings by the staff members, legal counsel, or law enforcement or emergency services officials concerning actions taken to respond to a threat to the public safety. Discussion of information subject to the exclusion in subdivision 2 or 14 of 2.2-3705.2 of the Code of Virginia, where discussion in open meeting will jeopardize the safety of any person or security of the facility, the building, or the structure, and the discussion of reports or plans related to the security of a governmental facility, building, or structure, and the safety of the persons using it, specifically the security of the Culpeper River County Courthouse as authorized by 2.2-3711A19 of the Code of Virginia.
All right, we have a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, this committee is now in closed session. Thank you. Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and as identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered by the board, by the committee in the closed meeting. If any member believes the board varied from the purpose for which the closed meeting was held, he or she must state so and why prior to casting the vote. Ms. Ellis?
Supervisor Brown,
Aye.
Supervisor Parrish,
Aye.
Supervisor Lee,
Aye. All right, I believe that's all we have for the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back at 10:20.